Drink with James, episode 87. Stay out of my drink. Welcome. Drink with James, episode 87. Very special Valentine's Day edition. You know, I gave Tim a $100 budget, and this is what he did. So, welcome. What do we want to say? I hope all of you had a good Valentine's Day. I myself am not a big Valentine's Day fan, and it's not actually specifically Valentine's Day that I don't like. I don't like any holidays like that. There are certain times in New York City, certain holidays that are like amateur night, you know? Like, you don't go out on St. Patrick's Day because, like, I get drunk, I drink. You know, let's say 5 nights a week I'm at a bar, okay? Like, New York City is a different culture. It's a drinking culture. That is not abnormal. Don't call my mother. And so the problem is that on what's the day I'm talking about? On St. Patrick's Day, the city fills up with amateurs that don't drink that much, and they come and they infest the bars and they vomit on my sidewalk, and all in all, they make it an unsavory experience to go out. Same for Halloween sometimes, although New Yorkers love Halloween and it's actually fairly fun. But Valentine's Day, look, I go out to dinner, again, 5-6 nights a week. I go out to dinner all the time. I go out to dinner with a young lady that I'm seeing all the time. I don't need a day on the calendar to do that. And so I generally avoid doing anything. I had a charcuterie poured last night and ate some bread and some meat and cheese, which, you know, if that doesn't say love, then I don't know what does. Just cheese and bread. And then, you know, a bunch of my employees came over and we just drank in the apartment, which is a very normal thing to do on Valentine's Day. So, I hope you all had a good Valentine's Day. I was out and about for Fashion Week a good amount last week. It was awesome to meet a bunch of you. I am getting a lot more people coming up to me saying they watch Drink with James and they love it. That's great because I'm a megalomaniac and I love being recognized in places. So if you see me out, especially if I look like I'm with friends, please come up to me and say you're a big fan. It makes me look cool. I personally just enjoy it, so do not be shy. I insist that you come up and bother me because it makes me look cool. So thank you guys for doing that. Is there anything else, Tim? You know, I don't know if y'all are Bachelorette fans. In the office, I wouldn't say just the women. I think like most people in the office are pretty big Bachelorette fans. Although I hear this guest, this like Bachelor is very boring. He's like a piece of toast and everybody hates him. So if you're expecting me to make a Bachelor joke and say something about accepting a rose, you will have to hold your breath because I'm not going to do that because that would be obvious. And if you've learned anything from Drink with James is that you should pursue creativity and you shouldn't be obvious. So I may use this as a pointer, but I will not ask you to accept a rose. Okay, let's move on to questions. I have to switch my glasses because I can't see a fucking thing in these. Question number 1. This is actually a great question I'm excited to answer. How do you price assets for a client that wants to use them outside of the influencer project, basically mixing the commercial and the influencer world? We see usage. Usage has become a huge deal in the space. Let me quickly explain why Instagram's algorithm, as I've heard from you guys many, many times, makes it hard for people to see your content, right? That is a problem for you, that is a problem for brands, that is a problem for everyone. And so when brands are working with an influencer now, often they also want to boost that post to make sure that they get it in front of as many people as possible. They do this because influencer content, even boosted influencer content, is proven to be much more effective in converting people than content from the brand. So they're essentially using the influencer content as their ads. So the brand needs to pay for that. That's something they need to pay extra for. But how do you price that out? That is a good question. it can depend on a lot of things, and there's no like just one thing that you can just say, okay, this is how you should do it. Is it boosted on Instagram? Is it going to be in their newsletters? Is it going to be on their homepage? Is it going to be in store? Is it going to be on a billboard? How are they using it? How long are they using it? Does it mess up your exclusivity possibilities with other brands? Like, you have to take all of that into account. If you're looking for just a baseline, like for boosting, generally, like I think a third of the price that you're charging them for the Instagram is probably fair. So if they paid you $1,000 for the Instagram and they want to boost it for a month afterwards, I would charge $300 to allow them to do that potentially. Again, that can vary greatly dependent on a lot of factors, but hard to give like a hard and fast number, but I think that's at least a good place to start. And then make sure that, again, if they're using it on e-com, if they're using it in their emails, that they're paying. And even, I would say, if you are doing something for free and they want to boost it, or they want to use it on e-com or their homepage, that could be an opportunity for you to get some money out of them. Sometimes when I used to shoot as a photographer, I would be shooting for PR and they wouldn't pay me, and then the e-commerce team would say, hey, I want to use this image for a newsletter, and I would be able to charge them for that image. In that case, I would charge them $200 to $500 a photo, generally. So I think another part of this question is, if a brand wants to pay for assets, how do you charge for that? Well, after the fact, you can do something like that. If they say, I want this one photo, I would charge maybe $250 to $500, depending on how good the photo is and depending on, you know, if it's your face or whatever it might be. So that's a kind of good starting place. For a bank of photos, if a brand says, I want one Instagram and 15 photos from you, again, that's a nice way to upsell. If a brand's like, I've got, you know, let's say, yeah, you say, oh, $1,500 for a post, and they say, I've got 1,000. You say, okay, well, how about 1,500, but I'll give you 15 photos after that you can use on your social. Brands are very, very hungry for more content, and that is a huge win for them. So consider that as a way to potentially upsell a brand. If they come to you and they want that, again, use your discretion. You know, generally to get a sponsored post, you're going to be shooting those photos anyway. So it's a nice way to make money off of them. So you want to get, you know, I feel like when you're negotiating, you want to hit in that realm that's like, you know, fair, where you make, you know, you're making good money. It's fair enough that like the negotiation won't take that long. So if they're if you're charging 1,000 for a sponsored post and they want 10 more photos, you know, I would charge them another $500 probably for that. Unless those 10 photos meant that you had to do, you know, a whole lot more work. You had to do multiple locations. Then I would charge according to that. So it gets difficult, but you want to look at it and say, what do I feel like is fair? And again, think about that price that's going to make you happy, so that when you walk away from it, you say, okay, I feel like I was fairly paid for this deal. As an LGBTQ niche, how can I leverage that to brands? So we've talked about niches a lot. I do not think we've talked about this niche specifically, so I think it's worth talking about. You know, the LGBTQ, I have like just the smallest amount of dyslexia. When I say like a bunch of letters together, I get a little confused. So the LGBTQ community obviously is one that has been historically you know, ignored by brands and marketing in general, and really happy to see that that is changing in a big way. Brands, you know, this is a business for them. And so while there are some brands that have very strong philosophical beliefs, they have things that they believe in and they're willing to make sacrifices for those beliefs, and kind of put their money where their mouth is, a lot of times, more often than not, brands are just riding a wave. You know, and if something feels like it's in vogue and they have to do it, then brands will do it then. You know, think about organic materials, right? In the 90s, Patagonia, who's a brand that has very strong beliefs as kind of core to their brand, Patagonia decided to switch to organic cotton in like 1992. They lost a shocking amount of money for years because organic cotton was so much more expensive. They were willing to do that though because they believed in it, and they said, I don't care that, at the time consumers didn't really care. Organic was not really a thing that they worried about. So Patagonia didn't have to do it because of market forces or because they weren't selling more, and they didn't do it because they thought they were going to sell more t-shirts if they switched to organic cotton. They did it because they believed in organic cotton, and they lost a lot of money because of it, but they were pivotal in getting organic cotton and organic materials into the limelight, and other people followed that didn't share those beliefs. So I think that in this community, it's a similar thing. You have brands that were trailblazers, and have been talking about this and been working with these communities and speaking to these communities for years. And now, as that has become a bit more in vogue and become something that just baseline a brand needs to do to kind of stay good in the public eye, I think that you can use that to your advantage. I think that brands always should be, at least I hope, seeking diversity in the people that they work with and the communities that they speak to. As it's become very clear that the LGBTQ community is incredibly powerful, both from a vocalization standpoint, but also just the money that they're spending. These brands are speaking to that community. So if that's the niche you speak to, that is a valuable niche for brands. And just when we talk, we talk the same way about, we've answered questions for people that are speaking to the plus size community. We've talked about people who are speaking to minorities. We've talked about people that are, coming from different countries. All of these things can be used to your advantage if you know how to talk to a brand about why that should be valuable to them. So definitely use it to your advantage. And any brand that would shy away from working with you because of it, just give them the middle finger. Fohr work with overseas brands and influencers. So an us-focused question, we love that. You can always ask us more questions about how it works, how Fohr Card works. I know there's a lot of new people. We're getting 1,000 or so influencers a week signing up. So not crazy that all of y'all have questions, so feel free to ask them. But we absolutely do work with influencers outside of the country. We do have clients all around the world. Not as much as we want, just because the influencer community, the influencer industries aren't as matured in those areas. There's just simply not as much money in Spain, for instance, in the influencer world as there is in New York City. So our focus continues to be New York, but we are certainly looking to expand our reach in those areas. We are always looking for more influencers across the world. So it's something that, we are not specifically just the US. It's more of a reaction to the industry and the fact that most of the, at least sponsorship money for influencers is in the US, because the US is such a powerful market, obviously. I think US brands are more sophisticated. I think that most international brands are a few years behind where their US counterparts are, as far as the way that they use influencers, the way that they report on them, the way that they kind of make sure they're getting the value out of them, and certainly their budgets. So I think that's the biggest difference. And then a difficulty in Europe is that in America, if you have a New York-based influencer, they've got an audience across the entirety of the US that they can speak to. And so it's pretty good value for brands to be able to work with a New York-based influencer and touch the entire country. Now, if you are a influencer from Poland, that post is not going to be relevant or valuable in Spain or Italy or Germany, probably. And so the areas are so much smaller, and that's why the budgets are smaller. Because you need, given the language barriers and all these other things, you need hyper-focused, hyper-localized influencers. And so it just gets harder, because I think, Europe, I think is about the size of America. Is it? I think it's similar size. But it's cut into so many different pieces that it's really hard to work across it fully. So again, if it would be like in America, if you were like, well, we need to work with a Chicago blogger, and they can only speak to people in Chicago. There just wouldn't really be enough money for that to be viable. So that's a big difference. I don't really know how it's going to get solved. I just think that the budgets are going to be more fractured, and you're going to have to be able to work with a lot of different people. So that's some of the big differences. We good? Well, look, guys, this was fun for us. Obviously, we haven't done anything like this before, but maybe this is the start of a kind of leveling up for the Drink with James. Who knows what the set will look like next week? But as always, I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you sharing things. We've got a couple cool things on the product side coming up for y'all. I think we'll probably announce that next week. Yeah. I wouldn't talk about it yet.
Right.
Yeah. So next video, we'll be able to talk about something really exciting that we're building specifically for the show that I think you guys are going to love. But send us those questions, put it in the comments, slide into the DMs, send us an email. Keep hustling. Cheers.